Hello, welcome everybody. This is the FORM VOLTRON podcast. I have Brian sitting across from me, and I want to not to put him on the spot, but just to start off today, this will be kind of like letting people know what we're going to do, what type of plans we have, ideas. We're going to have guests. We've got a lot of things that we hope are going to make people think. Brian, I'm going to put you on the spot for a second.
How are you?
I'm all right. I just want people to know it's important to me. I've actually been approached many times over the years. Well, let me say this. As you know, Brian, I've been interviewed many, many times on podcasts, radio shows, believe it or not, websites, online magazine type things over the years. And we're probably going now on 15 years of people telling me I should host my own show. And I've said no every single time. I feel I'm a better guest than a host. And I've always rejected the idea. I said I'm going to put you on the spot. You actually approached me about this.
Yeah.
And I think Kevin a couple times maybe even kind of said, you guys maybe as a group have said you should have your own show. First couple times you asked me. And I just was like, nah, man, that's not for me. I don't know if you remember or not. It did kind of come up casually, or you're nudging me a little. And then for whatever reason, the last time you asked me, which was a couple months ago, I don't know, the way you pitched it to me, it just kind of made sense.
Well, I heard the FORM VOLTRON YouTube channel.
That was probably the selling point. You kind of said, what about like a podcast version of your YouTube channel?
Yeah.
And I said to you too, I'm not delusional about it. I think that YouTube channel could be a lot bigger, and some of that's on me. I probably don't push it as much.
Get some views.
Yeah, it does. It does. I think what happens is once in a while when I catch a topic as it's happening, for example, they had Sununu up in New Hampshire, Governor Sununu, Chris Sununu, on The View, and I made a comment moments after the interview, and that got a lot of views.
Yeah.
So if it's a hot topic as it's happening right at that moment, I've noticed a lot of people, you might get views in the thousands, but a lot of my little dialogues and stuff, sometimes those things are only getting 40, 50 views, and that's fine. I'm grateful for the people that listen, but I do believe that in this format, it would reach a bigger audience. That as well. I have no doubt about that. So I think I need help. You've been very good to me. You've been helping me out. I wanted you to be part of this. Yeah. And you've already been doing some work for me. And I think having someone else there that maybe is a little more savvy with how to promote stuff, I think that's a big help too. So thank you, Brian. Today I just want people to know what this is going to be about. We've got a lot of ideas, some really cool ideas for guests and things that I think people in this area need to hear, which is a good lead into probably what today's thing, and today will probably be a shorter one, just to give a little blueprint of what is going to happen. What I talk about, the issues I address, they're for everybody. They're universal. Doesn't matter where you live, where you're from. I think these are kind of themes that are congruent with any country, any culture, any religion, any type of segment of society. But one thing the audience does need to understand, and I hope this opening episode is something people can fall back on. If they find out about us maybe 10 episodes in, they can always go back to this first one. And if they miss the other ones, this will get them up to date, no matter what point they find out about it. I think this will be a good just general assessment of where I'm coming from. What people need to understand, I would say especially people outside of this state, is even though these topics, these ideas do transcend wherever you're coming from, very important that you understand, I've lived in Massachusetts my whole life, and politically I'm a product of what's going on here. So in other words, as we've talked about, as I've been a guest other times with you and Kevin, sometimes people misunderstand and they automatically assume that, I'm a conservative. I understand why they understand that. And it's very simple to explain. I am criticizing my leaders, the people who are handing down whatever idiotic laws or mandates or whatever I have an issue with. What is the dominant party in the state? It's the Democrats. Okay? So if I'm lashing out against my oppressor, I'm going to automatically be lashing out against the left wing. Being that, in a state like this, the conservatives are not very powerful. Some would even argue they're almost non-existent. Likewise, if I was broadcasting out of, let's say, Mississippi, who would I be lashing out against? Republicans. Now, it doesn't matter how, I understand no matter how many times I say that, this isn't going to sink in with some people. People, you got to understand you are a product of your environment. No matter how much you may believe that you're thinking outside the box, you're probably not. The root word of culture is cult. You get what I'm saying? Your ideas, your politics, everything's, it's conditioned. When I speak with someone who is either right-wing or left-wing, I already know what they're going to say. I know what their ideas are. I know what their argument is going to be. I know what point they're coming from. I see it from a mile away. Because most people, as I've said before, they're not speaking from a spot of their own personal beliefs that they have come up with. All most people are doing is reiterating what's been taught to them. For example, I'm a conservative. Let me guess. You got your American flag hanging out in the front door. You got your guns. You got your church. But how did you know? Because that's your ideology. There's nothing wrong with any of those things. A liberal, let me guess. You're an environmentalist. You're for animal rights. I can go right down the line. Equality for people. You're against. You don't like guns. You're concerned about violence in schools. How did you know that? Well, it's easy. I mean, that's your platform. I know exactly what you're going to say. And again, nothing wrong with any of that either. I don't have a issue with any of those. But the problem is people are just regurgitating what their parents' politics were, what their school told them, their church, their friends, the people they hung out with at college. They're just constantly, perpetually regurgitating the same ideology over and over again. I remember when Mitt Romney was running for president, and I'm going to, hopefully if I can remember, I'll get to him in a minute. I was constantly saying about him, I don't know what Mitt Romney's about. I get the ideology that he's regurgitating, but I don't really know what his ideas are about. And I stand by that. I could say that for a lot of politicians. Speaking of, so let's get into that for a second. And I do, again, I'm going to talk about Massachusetts for a minute, but I do think what I'm talking about is universal. I hear over and over again, and I've had this conversation with people. Yeah, I get what you're saying. But you know what? I vote for the Democrats because at least they're not the Republicans. At least they're not those Nazis. Anything's better than Donald Trump, et cetera, et cetera. That's not cutting it for me anymore. I'm sitting in a state where I'm seeing people get slapped around, abused by their politicians. What it costs to live here is insulting. It's astronomical. And people are willing to let that go for the sake of, well, as long as it's not a Republican. People will allow themselves to get slapped in the face as long as it's not a Republican. How does that make any sense? Why is that your standard? Well, Donald Trump didn't do it to me. You can abuse me in any way you want, just as long as it wasn't Donald Trump. I brought up Mitt Romney. The reason I brought him up is this. There is a laundry list of people right now. Mitt Romney, Deval Patrick, Elizabeth Warren. The list goes, I mean, I could sit here all day with this list of people who are not from Massachusetts. They see you and me as an opportunity, as a vote. They move here. They bring their politics here. knowing that it's a liberal state and their beliefs are liberal. Maybe not in the case of Mitt Romney, but then again, he did do this whole healthcare thing that Barack Obama ended up copying. So, you got to remember, whether it's Charlie Baker or Mitt Romney, a Republican in Massachusetts isn't really what you would consider to be a Republican in other parts of the world, other parts of the country, I should say. I mean, they tend to have very left-leaning ideas. So, just keep that in mind when I talk about those types of Republicans. They travel to this state, they see the political climate, and they see it as an opportunity. In the case of Mitt Romney, he left the state after he became governor, went on to do other things. I believe Mitt's from Michigan, now he's in Utah. A lot of people think he's from Utah. I believe he's actually from Michigan. In any case, he's not. He came here to get something, to elevate his political career. A lot of people are doing that. They are using you and me. They're not from here. They don't know what you and me are going through. And they use us. Do you understand you're being used? Do you understand the magnitude of that? Charlie Baker used you. We'll get to him in a second, too. I have nothing against people coming to this state. Everyone in this country is welcome to live wherever they want. I have many great friends who are not originally from this state. And likewise, I've got friends all over the country who were really good to me and didn't really know much about where I was from or this part of the country. Likewise, I have no problem. Immigration's a big topic. People are welcome to roam the earth, to live in whatever country they want. I would hope they would do it the proper way and not do, sneak in or whatever it is. I mean, there are rules and regulations, obviously, which sometimes I don't even agree or disagree with them. I have issues with a lot of that type of stuff too. But assuming that they're on the up and up and they're trying to make their lives better, anyone has the right to go anywhere they want. I can go move to Poland if I want. Okay? So anyone has the right to come to this state. But with the politicians, it's a little different. They're moving here and using you for their political gain. That's a left-wing state. I got left-wing politics, or maybe I'm a Republican and I'm not as strict as some of the other far-leaning right Republicans. And that is a place where I know I can win. That's all you are to them. A lot of this I realized, not that I needed help anyway, but during the coronavirus, that really freaked me out. I knew it was bad. I didn't think it was this bad. Even I was like, kind of laughing at the beginning of it, going, you're never going to get people to do this stuff. Boy, was I wrong. Boy, was I wrong. I sat and watched grown adults, grown men, who sit at their coffee shops screaming at CNN, screaming about the liberals. Again, they got their gun rights. Don't touch my rifle. You come to my house, and I laugh at all that stuff too. You know why I laugh at it? I watch these same proud men all over the place in every corner of the state crumble, line up, and obey when Charlie Baker issued them some of the most idiotic sets of instructions and mandates, borderline comical, that I've ever seen. And they went along with it. You don't need to be a scientist or a medical expert to see the lunacy that took place. We're going to have a curfew. We're going to close the stores at 9 o'clock. Right. That makes sense. So let me get this straight. There's this deadly disease ripping through the Commonwealth, and you need to spread people out. So our solution is close the stores early, which will encourage people to pile in. You all saw this. Tons of people piling into the stores right after work because the place is going to close early. It's closing at 9 o'clock, 8 o'clock. I better run. You caused people to pile in there even more significantly than what you should have done was, if you're really worried about the coronavirus, you should have let the stores open later. Spread the people out a little bit. Give them more time to get in there. But instead you did the exact opposite, causing people to be more packed in there than they otherwise would have. And when someone like me pointed this out, I was evil. I was the enemy. Simple science. You're wearing a mask. No, I'm not. I'm not wearing that thing. Why not? I'll tell you why. Because there's this virus going around. It's going to rip you apart. It's going to ruin your life. But not when you're eating. For some reason, you can take it off when you're eating. To the point where I saw restaurants packed with people shoulder to shoulder with no masks on. Because when there's food in the room, it magically disappears. This is the craziest, most idiotic concept I've ever witnessed in my life. And I watch grown adults who are suspicious of what happens in this state go along with it. Or how about when they used to wash the doorknobs? Remember that? We got to polish it. The doorknobs were wet. That's how much of the Windex or whatever they were putting on it. After a couple months, gave up on that, didn't they? Suddenly touching the doorknob isn't a bad thing. Oh, but you could touch the credit card, couldn't you, Brian? The little thing where you put the credit card in. Don't touch the doorknobs, but then we're all going to touch the credit card. Little scan up thing there. Okay, all right, you don't catch germs that way. Here's my issue with the coronavirus. If anyone's followed my work, I was warning about this probably 20 years ago when the flu vaccine was being pushed on people. Parents were being harassed if they didn't get their kid the flu vaccine. I stopped for a second. I said, wait a minute. For the duration of my entire existence, nobody, and I mean nobody, was worried about the flu. Not once in my entire life did I hear one person ever say, I got the flu. Everyone say your goodbyes because this could be it for me. Never once did a child in my kindergarten get the flu. And never once was anybody worried that that kid wasn't going to come back or wasn't going to return or that there'd be an empty seat at the Play-Doh table because that kid got the flu. Suddenly, overnight, when the flu vaccine was available, we started seeing numbers at how deadly the flu is. The flu had to be deadly, right? I mean, you're not going to take this vaccine if it's not deadly. Suddenly, the flu became deadly. You notice chickenpox. Brian, I don't know if you were old enough, but people joke about this. I remember the chickenpox sleepovers.
Yeah,
I was never at any of them, but they did have those. Those were real.
You get all the kids together so they can all have
And you know why that was?
To have the thing go through them.
Yeah.
So that supposedly they wouldn't have shingles later because
and you know why they did it, Brian?
Why is that?
Because nobody was afraid of the chickenpox. Now, these chickenpox. Gotta get that chickenpox vaccine, man. These chickenpox, you never know. Chickenpox are ripping through people, killing them. Okay, whatever. There are illnesses and germs that we get in this country that we think nothing of. That in parts of the world where they don't have the technology that we have, it will kill you. We're not one of those countries, Brian. We're just not.
We don't have malaria.
Brian, there are countries, I mean, an upset stomach will kill you. I mean, I have heard people call me an anti-vaccine person. Wrong. The reason you call me anti-vaccine is because you are a marionette. You polish shoes. I've probably said over 100 times I'm not against vaccines. And then people hear me say that, and then they call me an anti-vaxxer. It's because you, the open-minded liberal of Massachusetts, the punk rocker, the person who does what you want to do, even when you hear me say that, you still think you're hearing me speak out against vaccines because you've been programmed. He's saying this, he's saying that, therefore he believes this. And like I said, the Republicans are the exact same way. Exact same way. I'm not picking on liberals. I'm not picking on left-wing people. Okay? My view, my lashing out goes the same for both parties. I'm not against vaccines. I never have been. I have said there are things that will hurt you badly, and it's probably a good idea to get a vaccine against it. My issue became when it became an excessive amount of it. When suddenly you're getting vaccines for things that we got all the time, you are going to have no immune system left. There are children now who cannot even be in a room with peanuts. They can't even be in the same room. Do you understand that when I was a child, that didn't exist? Do you understand? I saw the birth of the peanut allergy when people would say, peanut allergy, what's that? What is that? Huh? You tell me they can't have peanuts? Now, you can't even have them in the schools.
They started having GMO peanuts.
Right. Well, and the other thing, right, we're seeing the side effects. I often spoke about my time working, there was a hospital I worked at that dealt with people with mental issues. And I looked around and said, this isn't right. I would talk to somebody. I was a counselor there. This was many years ago. And I loved that job, but the schedule didn't work with, another job that I had at the time. Well, I still have, but schedules weren't kind of mixing well together at one point. That's why I had to leave. But I loved the job. I didn't want to leave it. I was a counselor there. I was hired to break up fights. Me and a bunch of my friends were hired to break up fights when people got agitated. And I somehow ended up becoming a counselor there. I had no college education. It was a really cool job. And, I just remember this happened over and over again. People waiting for their medication. What happened? Someone they cared about passed away. And I'm sitting there saying, yeah, but that doesn't mean you have a mental disorder. You're using medication to quell something that we all go through. I was one of the few people that had there was a vehicle that if people had a doctor's appointment or if someone got hurt and they needed a ride to the hospital, there was me and like two other people that had the key to this kind of it was this like van type thing. And we would go there and sit there while they're a lot of times I sat in the room with them during their doctor's appointments. And so I'd hear all this stuff. And I noticed more and more. Someone would get the slightest injury. And it was like, oh, get an x-ray, MRI, 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 MRI. And again, I'm not a tinfoil hat person. This is rational thinking. People would say, well, there's not that much danger in an x-ray. There's such a little amount. Yes. But they're sending these people constantly for every little thing.
The doctors wear protection when they do that.
Great point. They're behind this big glass thing, whatever.
And lead vests.
Yep. But you're okay. It's okay for you. And the argument, I will bet you, Brian, their argument would be, yeah, but we're around it all the time. Well, I told you that story when I still kind of feel bad about it. Years ago, I stopped going to the dentist. And it was over that x-ray. And it was the same justification, Brian. It was it's small amounts. And I said, yeah, but you're doing this to me twice a year. So in 10 years, I just got it 20 times. Now mix that with all the other stuff. I mean, I don't go to the doctor. The only thing I ever really went to was the dentist. And I stopped going there too because of all this nonsense. It's too much. Getting MRIs and CAT scans and x-rays all the time for the slightest little thing is I started noticing this.
Unnatural.
Yeah, it's unnatural. It started making me nervous. Brian, something that's very hard to discuss for a lot of people. When somebody is in an industry or an occupation, the natural move is to defend it, even if they kind of know they're wrong. I've talked about, I know a lot of girls who worked at these hospitals and told me privately, and I never gave any of their names out. I would never put them on the spot, but they told me, I was told to write coronavirus down for everything.
Yeah, and they got
everything.
They got pay incentive for it.
They were told, just put coronavirus. I know families who people passed away from, they had some type of organ dysfunction, whatever, and it finally caught up with them, and they're writing coronavirus. I mean, I know someone who's trying to sue a hospital right now. I told him, I wouldn't let that go. So anyway, I knew girls who worked at these hospitals and told me, yeah, they just write, and it's so nonchalant, just write coronavirus. People need to know that. It was happening a lot. You got to understand, if you have the coronavirus and you're being quarantined, at any level of that, even if it's not really making you sick, they're still putting you all in the same spot.
They did the same thing to mortality issues, like
Right.
too. If you were if you got your head chopped off on the highway.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That guy famously in, I forget what state, I want to say it was Florida, remember, fell off the motorcycle and they wrote coronavirus.
Yeah.
It made the news. I mean, a lot of the conservative talk shows were like, what are we doing here?
It was for a paycheck.
What?
It was for
Right.
money,
What are we
money.
doing here? And Brian, I want to address, because like anyone who worked in the hospital is like, I was there. Well, yeah. If they're stuffing every person into one section, even if they're not sick, it's like, you have it, you got to go over there. Well, if I was working on the floor, I would think the world was caving in on me too. And then you got these other hospitals where they're doing dance routines that look like it took them hours and hours to put these things together. It's like, weren't you dealing with sick people? What was it? Project Veritas. Is James O'Keefe? Is that his name?
Yeah.
I think it was him. He did the video. He goes to the hospital and goes up to the guy working there. He goes, "Where's all the people?" And the guy's right there on camera. Go, "Yeah, they're not really. It's not really happening like
A
this."
bunch of hospitals.
Right. And I want to get back to the flu for a second. Again, the point I was making that I wanted to wrap up with that was, you never heard flu numbers before, ever. Now we talk about the flu. The flu. Thousands of people died from the flu. The flu this, the flu that. You need your flu shot. Well, I would say this. How come you never had a shutdown? And mind you, you will hear this over and over again throughout this podcast, or throughout the episodes. I do not use the word lockdown. I'm not a prisoner. That is a prisoner term. I don't do lockdown. I don't do shutdown. I don't do evacuation. My property is my responsibility. Brian, your property is your responsibility, not the police's. You have every right to sit in that house and guard your property during a calamity. Okay? And again, I don't mind once in a while. I don't mind officials with the best intentions saying, hey, it'd be a really good idea for you to evacuate. The problem is, it's all the time now. It's every 5 minutes. It's Marty Walsh saying shelter in place, and they're getting caught with no mask in Hingham. Right down here on the South Shore.
And that's another point I wanted to bring up for you is
Go ahead.
The people coming in from the outside to come do their politics in here.
Yep.
Yeah, if you notice, that's what they're doing with the police forces too. People should be
Right.
policing their own goddamn town, but instead, they want these police officers to have no connection with the community that they serve. So they put them out from
Do you know what I
hours
thought
away.
you know what I thought you were going to say? Another incredible point that I didn't think of.
Go right ahead.
And this is what I thought you were going to say. I talked about politicians coming in from other states.
Yeah.
Marty Walsh is from this state. Now he's working down in Washington, D.C.
Oh yeah.
So that's when you said inside guy, that's a local guy who did that to us. Gino Raimondo down in Rhode Island. You will Whitmer. If I see you gathering, I will be there with the state police. We will take care of this problem. And twice she was caught without a mask. And now she's been rewarded along with Marty.
Rules for thee,
Down
not for me.
down in Washington, D.C. She looked in your eyes through that TV. She glared at you. You will obey these mandates. She was obeying none of them. Laurie Lightfoot.
And then they close your windows of time of availability for when you're allowed to be somewhere.
Right.
Concentrate. It's almost like the politics want to dictate what you do with your time.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
freedom over your own time.
Yes.
Is kind of fucking
Yes.
your thing. That should be.
Well, Brian, they took 2 years of your life you're never going to get back. Let's start there.
all the kids.
You're never getting it back. Okay? They did that over what? H1N1 or swine flu. Is swine flu and H1N1, I think, are the same thing. That is the slang for swine. Barack Obama, I believe.
I could be wrong about that.
Yeah, I believe 11,000 dead during his presidency. Okay. So you're to tell me 11,000 people dead is not worth a shutdown? No shutdown. You didn't do it for them. You don't do it for the flu. Every life matters, right, Brian?
Mm-hmm.
So no shutdown if you were the poor soul who died from the flu, which I still say is like not worth worrying about, but let's go with that. You died from the flu. Died from the chicken pox. Died from the sniffles. We always know even something as a cold can kill an elderly
Your
person.
body goes through a natural cycle
Right.
usually every year. If
Right.
you've got toxins in you,
Right.
you're going to feel like shit
Right.
and sweat all that shit out.
Swine flu. Remember Ebola reached California that time? No shutdown?
By mosquito, right?
I don't know how it was, but
No, it was the
no
water.
shutdown for Ebola. No shutdown for Ebola? Okay. Only for the coronavirus.
That's been the most extreme measure, definitely. I don't know what they did in the 1920s when, I don't know, whatever came through, but
The Spanish flu.
Spanish flu.
I researched that a lot. I don't. Yeah, I seen photos of people with masks and stuff.
There were less people here, supposedly.
Was it really on the level of what happened to us? I don't think so. Society has never seen what was done to us. People are already forgetting the magnitude of that.
Life expectancy wasn't exactly
That too.
what it was.
And another thing that bugged me about that, I tell the story, just how these guys acquiesced. All these guys that they're poisoning the kids' minds. The liberals, they're taking our freedom. And then you just went right along with this. The guys up at Cumberland Farms up the road here who I saw, right when we kind of knew Charlie was going to shut everything down, they're sitting there. Instead of saying, what are we going to do about this? They gossiped like they were at a tea party, like a British tea party in the 1930s. Yeah, did you hear? Yeah, he's going to shut it down. He's going to shut it down. Almost like they were giddy about it. Gave him something to talk about.
Well, yeah, control measures.
Right.
Everybody gets excited about that shit.
Back to the politics of this state. In talking about my anger and frustration being directed at my oppressor. I watched a debate last year. It was a city council debate in Boston. Every single person on that council was a Democrat. Now, let me preface it by saying this. I'm not advocating for right-wing or left-wing politics. In fact, what I've always said was the two-party system is the problem. 2 is a magical, magical number. One of the most magical numbers we have when it pertains to issues, social issues, political issues, any type of issue. Why is it so magical? If you have 3 or 4 or 5 choices, if you have a room of 100 people, I give you 5 choices, it's going to spread the people out a bit. Let's say one person chose door 1, one chose door 2, 3 and 4, so forth. And then the entire rest of the room of 100 people all went in the same door. You'd still have 4 people rumbling through there with different beliefs. You'd still have a little bit of a mix. What happens with 2 is this. One side picks one side picks the other, and that's it. Now it's one side pitted against another side. And it is absolute. There is no other, you're on this side, it's us against you. Now, let's say in that room of 100 people, 97 people pick door 1, or 97 people are going to wear the purple shirt, and 3 people are going to wear the yellow shirt. You've still got one side against the other. You've still got the minority against the majority. That's what happens with a two-party system. If you had 4 or 5 choices, you would break things up again. You wouldn't have this battle of one side versus the other, this polarizing thing that happens. Now, I know people are going to say, well, you do have alternate parties. You've got the Green Party, the Rainbow Party, the Constitution Party, the Libertarian Party. Yeah, you do. But the problem is every one of those parties that I just named is still leaning right or left. I'm talking about parties that have different ideas that are not right or left or taking from both sides. We really don't have that. We've got one side versus the other side. So then what happens is this. You've got states where it becomes not even one side anymore. It becomes one state's leaning one side or the other. It becomes dominant. So that's bring back to what I was just talking about this debate I was watching. I'm watching this thing, and the entire panel of people running, every one of them is a Democrat. Now, your first thought might be, yeah, there's no variety up there. Because even 2 choices, even some Republicans up there would be better than nothing at all. At least there's some variety between the 2. No, that's actually not where I'm going with this. What was so hilarious to me about this debate as I watched it, you have every Democrat on there saying my opponent doesn't know what they're talking about. My opponent had held office in another town or different place in Boston, and they messed up this, they messed up that. People are living in poverty because then they're talking about the current administration, the current councilman or mayor. Boston's a mess. Boston's in poverty. Oh, by the way, I'm not from Boston, okay? I want to make that clear, too. I'm not one of these people, these people that live in Middleborough and want to tell everyone they're from Boston. I'm not from Boston. We down here on the South Shore is a totally separate thing. I don't walk around lying to people, going on trips and saying I'm from Boston and, exaggerating my accent. The way I talk is the way I talk. The way I act is the way I act. I got nothing to do with that town. It's one town in a state of over 300. I'm my own thing. But we're talking about Boston. We'll use that as the example. Because people like Marty Walsh, whether you know it or not, do have influence down here. As someone told me one time, Salem doesn't do their own thing. They follow what Boston does. Bunch of followers over there in Salem, like most towns. Marty Walsh's press conferences had every bit of power as when Karen Polito or Charlie Baker spoke during the coronavirus. So where I was going with this is these Democrats on this panel are saying the current mayor is, Boston's in poverty. People can't afford to live here. There's violence. And they do this in all parts of the state too. You can say it about any town. You can say it about the governor's race. And I'm laughing to myself saying, hold on. We all know you are a party, Democrat party. You all have pretty much agreed upon policies. And we know by voting for you, you're going to side with that party. All these people you're criticizing, your opponents, who have held previous office positions, you're pointing fingers at the current mayor. You're pointing members at other city councilmen, selectmen, whatever it is in that town. What party are they all from? The Democrats. See, that's my issue. I'm not here criticizing Democrats. I'm not saying they're bad people. I get it. We only have two parties. You got to pick one. I don't hold it against anybody.
Well, along with that comes all the companies that give them money.
That too. Absolutely, Brian.
You're basically voting for them too.
Political campaign money goes a long way. That's a great way to put it. You're voting for the company. Yeah. You're voting for the companies that paid for their campaigns. Excellent point. But what I was going to say was, if the state's in poverty, and this is a Democrat state where the Republicans can't get a word in, then whose fault is that? And furthermore, if you are also a Democrat, if it's been 50 years of Democrats leading us into the poverty, and you're a Democrat, what's different about you? You can go down, look at all, go town by town. Now, I've heard that the South Shore is particularly one of the only areas around here that's sort of conservative, and I got some theories on that. But for the most part, it's a liberal state, it's a left wing, it's a Democrat state. People vote Democrat here because their parents voted Democrat, because that's all they hear is the Democrat point of view. It's because the punk rock is here, the free-thinking people, the liberals, the hippies, the college kids who think they're free from the machine, the computer. No, you were part of that. You were conditioned to vote Democrat, just like someone in Alabama was conditioned to vote Republican. You're no different. You're no different than that zombie that votes for Trump. I hate racism. I hate racists. But for some reason, Hillary Clinton can hang out with the Ku Klux Klan mastermind, Robert Byrd. That's okay. For pictures of her to be hugging the guy, kissing him, and calling him her mentor. A Ku Klux Klan's member. That's okay, Democrats. You still haven't answered for that. Democrat Party, the party of segregation. Or again, let's get back to Hillary Clinton. Goes on the Breakfast Club, knowing she's talking to a black audience, and does something, one of the most appalling things I've ever seen. Pulls out of her pocketbook. They go, what's in your pocketbook? I have hot sauce. what would happen to a Republican if he went on that same show and said, I have hot sauce? His career would be over. Overnight, he would be labeled a Nazi, a rapist, and a child molester for saying something like that. But again, like I said at the beginning of this broadcast, Hillary Clinton can slap you around. Hillary Clinton can stomp on the faces of minorities and no one's going to say a word because that's the standard. And I've had black people tell me that. Had them tell it to me I've had this conversation over and over again. Yeah, but it's still better than Trump. Okay, it's still better than Republicans. So you'll let her hang out with a Klansman. And you're okay with that as a black person. Okay, go get them. There is no standard. No one is holding these people responsible. So again, I didn't really finish my thought. Back to, you can go town by town. You'll look at, David Carroll, who I'm a huge fan of on YouTube. He kind of made me realize this. He gave the example of these kids that made a rap video. I want to say it was in New Jersey. It might have been Maryland, New Jersey, somewhere in that area. And he said they've got a video where they're saying they've got a gun in their trunk ready for Donald Trump. They don't like Donald Trump. They're going to bring harm to him. And he says, he made this great point. He says, he researched their region where they live. And he said, who is your mayor? Democrat. Who is the head of your council on aging? Democrat. Who is the head of the school department, the superintendent? A black Democrat. Who is your mayor? Who is your going right down the line? A Democrat, a female, a minority. He goes, you have all the people in place that are congruent with your policies. You have everything. You live in a Democrat stronghold, excuse me. Trump has no influence on your state. He has no power in your state. I believe it was during the campaign. He wasn't even president yet. He hadn't even won yet. He goes, this guy isn't even president yet. He has no power. Even if he was, you're a Democrat stronghold with Democrat policies. 30 years of the Democrats being able to do, much like this state, whatever they want to do with no Republicans stopping them. So when there's poverty, when there's violence, when there's racism, who allowed that to happen? It wasn't the Republicans. You have no Republicans. You have no Republican Party in that state. It's a joke. Yeah, they race, they try to get in there. You might have a couple people at the town hall in the little towns. But other than that, it's a Democrat state. Trump has no bearing on you. And who are you blaming? Trump, Republicans, when he had nothing to do with your predicament. Same here. I often, made reference to examples where Donald Trump was giving orders to the courts throughout the country. The courts here ignored him. They did, even when he gave orders, they just ignored him, which is cool. I like that. I like that a state can just ignore the president. But my point is this. I hear Trump this, Trump that in this state. Trump had no effect in this state. When we were suffering, when we were under the reign of Charlie Baker, taking everything from us, did Donald Trump swoop in and save you? All you Republicans here got your Trump signs. Trump did nothing for you. Trump has no power here. You are safe, Massachusetts. Republicans have no power here. Trump has no power here. So when I hear you say we have poverty in this state, we have problems, the Democrats brought that to you. You need to understand that. I'm not telling you to vote Republican. I'm not criticizing the Democrats. I'm asking you to wake up to the reality that this is a Democrat state, and these political issues you have with the state were brought to you by Democrats. I'm not saying the answer is Republicans. I'm saying, as I did in the beginning, this whole thing where, well, at least it's not a Republican, at least it's not Donald Trump. Not doing it for me anymore. It's not a proper standard. Letting people spit on us. You've got men in this state, grown men, who will fight you, who will knock every one of your teeth out if you're wearing a Yankees shirt. He will fight for that. He will fight for these Red Sox, these millionaires who are also not from here and don't care about you. They will fight. They will risk life and limb. But when Charlie Baker tells them, put on a mask, but you don't have to wear it at the Olive Garden. You don't have to wear it at the Ground Round. You don't have to wear it at Ruby Tuesdays. You say, okay. When someone slapped you in the face, stomped on your head, you were okay with it. You were okay with it. Remember that news clip, that thing that got caught on camera? It was only the audio. I don't believe there was any video of it. But it was a press conference, I believe, in Pennsylvania. And one of the reporters said, hey, aren't we supposed to wear a mask? And they giggled. They laughed. No, we don't wear it. We just put it on for the press conference. People are out there suffering. Their lives are being taken from them. These kids are walking around like zombies, seeing little nursery school kids in the mask. And as long as Charlie Baker didn't have a Philadelphia Eagles sweatshirt on, everything was cool, man. We're good. We're good. I am not the toughest. I am not the most patriotic. I am by no means an example of courage. But let me tell you this. The trouble I almost got in during that coronavirus. Every time I went in the store, not wearing a mask. Do you know what happened to me? Do you know how many times I thought the police were going to be called on me? How many times I thought it was going to turn into a fist fight? And I heard all these men yelling about the Revolutionary War. They got their Trump signs. We need to do something. We need to bring back freedom. They got their big trucks with their stickers, don't touch my guns. But yet, I knew guys who were too terrified, too scared to go into a store without a mask. They wouldn't do it. And I said at the beginning, first of all, I laughed when I heard of the mask thing. I go, there's no way you're going to get all these people to wear surgical masks. No way. Boy, was I wrong. I tried rounding up other people, other grown tough guys, or so-called tough guys. Don't do it. You can't do it. Because once you wear that mask, you're signing up for all of this. And they wouldn't do it. They were too scared. The number of people that actually were willing to go into a store without a mask, it was, believe me, it was minute. I went through a year and a half of it. It was almost non-existent. I'd see guys pulling into these stores with their NRA stickers on their trucks. Their shirt that said, don't touch this flag or I'll try hurting this flag. I'll smash your teeth. And they got that mask on. I hear all these men now who now are saying, yeah, that coronavirus thing, I don't know about that. It was kind of I don't know what was going on. I don't know if I believe in it. What's going on in the schools? What are they teaching their kids? I say, hey, man, you signed up for all of this. And what are they teaching the kids? All I hear about is transgender, homosexual. Yeah? Who cares? Who cares? For 30 years, the schools, MTV, Kiss 108, Maddie in the Morning, have been encouraging young kids, elementary school kids, to have sex with multiple partners, learn about different sexual scenarios, get an abortion. And you didn't say anything. Many times, you were okay with it. Telling me I need to relax. Dan, it's just Girls Gone Wild. It's just the man show. It's just the Foxy Lady. It's just Mary Lou's Coffee. They're not doing any harm. They're not exploiting those girls. They're not pushing a sexual agenda at all. You need to relax. It's just 2.5 men. What's the big deal, Dan? Danny?
It's okay when they do it. When it's entertainment.
Well, what I would say is this. The Republican, like the liberal, is plugged into the machine. What is the machine? Well, I go to church and the church says homosexuality is wrong. So when they teach it in the school, I have to react. I have to do something. But the 30 years of straight mayhem where the kids were told to go to college and do whatever, no matter what trouble it might get them into, what diseases they might catch, that was totally cool. That was cool. I gave examples. I've seen commercials during Super Bowls on the field where this same vulgarity was pushed. But again, no one cared. Because when it's in a straight scenario, that's okay. And again, I have no problem with the homosexuals or homosexuality being taught in school. Even the transgender stuff doesn't really bother me. My issue is when you start pushing that on little kids, it turns into another conversation. Telling kids to respect people, not to bully people, that's fine. But the problem is it turns into a sexual thing. And they know, the people teaching that know that. They are very well aware of that. A great example of this, too, is marijuana. I have no issue with marijuana or drugs. I don't care if drugs are legal or illegal. My issue always has been, and I've said this, look at the people in the late 90s, early 2000s that were so animate about pushing marijuana. What was it? MTV was one of them. Legalize hemp. They were huge. Look at all the other things MTV was pushing onto kids. When an organization that is glorifying every type of sexual, every type of dangerous behavior, drugs, you name it, is now also telling me, because I was in high school when they started doing that, to do marijuana, a little alarm goes up. I'm not saying marijuana is bad for you. What I'm questioning is why the enthusiasm over it. Is it possible it's just one more distraction? It's medical, it's medical, it's medical. I know there's lots of things out there medical, and nobody can name any of them because those aren't the ones that get you high. I have nothing against pot smokers. Nothing. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm not saying make it illegal. I'm not saying make any drugs illegal. I don't care. I'm just questioning the motives. I'm forever questioning the motives. Again, I'm not saying Democrats are bad or it's bad to live in a left-wing state. What I'm saying is when someone's slapping you around, taking your rights away, and there's no Republicans anywhere to be found, who else am I going to blame? So, Brian, we're going to have a lot of different guests. We're going to talk about a lot of different things.
Yeah.
I talked politics today. We're going to talk social issues. I just kind of wanted to today let people know kind of where I'm coming from, where my angle is, so they can have that and understand that when I discuss these things or when I ask questions of our guests. We're not going to say it, but the next episode we do have a guest. And you know I'm amped up for this. This is going to be, wow, what a great way to kick this off. It's somebody that some people may remember, some may not. But even if they don't remember, when I jog their memory, they're going to, oh yeah, I remember that. It's going to come back to them. I mean, this was big. I got in touch with the person, didn't think I was going to get an answer. You've been talking to him too. We're not going to announce it. It's just the episode's going to appear.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay? I've got a lot of ideas for guests. And sometimes, as you had suggested, kind of like the YouTube channel, I'm just going to talk. Maybe I'll talk with you and when I have an idea. And that's another thing I want people to know. This is not going to be a weekly or even necessarily a monthly thing. Unfortunately, you're going to have to wait. We're going to interview this person the first week of July. So we're looking at the next episode's going to be a few weeks away, 2 or 3 weeks away. When I feel inspired, when I have an idea, when there's something I need to talk about, you told me to let you know. We'll come in here, we'll record it.
Yep. When
I have a guest, when there's someone I want to talk to that I think I can get in here, but there's no pattern here. Don't come looking here every week for a new episode. We'll do it when I feel like it.
Surprise,
Right. If there's 5 weeks in between each episode, so be it. And Brian, I want to thank you. This was your idea, and I asked you for some things. I said, look, you're running the soundboard there. I don't know this stuff. I'm going to need a lot of help from you. I'm trying not to lean on you a lot. I don't want to overwhelm you. You've got a lot going on.
Nah, I'm good.
Okay,
but
have I been a pain so far?
No, not at all. And those wonder, and I'm not left or right. I'm fucking anarchist.
Brian, do you want to say anything about your background? Geez, you're going to be chiming in. Anything you want to say? Your background? Tell us about you.
I can tell you what the left or the right or the red or the blue are doing. I do not support either. I can tell you that they're both doing bad shit.
Yeah. Brian, one thing about you I want people to know, and I have a lot of friends like this, and this is where I kind of veer off. You're really good at you're really good at getting into the weeds with stuff, and I know a lot of people like that. One thing, probably a huge difference between you and me, and it's good to have you here because I know there's a lot of blind spots I have where you definitely fill them in. I keep things very, very simple. I believe that I get it. I get this. You brought up you're voting for whoever paid for their political campaigns. So that's something you would think to say, and I wouldn't. And that's genius. I should think to say it, but I don't. I like to, when people get really technical with me, like, listen, this company funded this company. And if you look, that guy who was running for office was in league with this guy, and his son works.
The money does answer a lot.
Absolutely.
But they dilute it so fucking much on purpose.
But with me, what I try to do is, and those arguments are welcome here, and I'm sure we'll have those guests and you'll have those angles. Me personally, I feel I'm more kind of like, listen, you just gave me all this information. It's overwhelming, and when someone's telling me this stuff, I'm like, look, you sound very intelligent, but the way I go is, do you really need all that to see what's happening? Look what's happening right in front of your face. Look at, any town in the state. Look at every day is a restriction. You have to check in. If you want to build this porch, you got to check in with this guy. You got to fill out this paper.
Yeah.
Oh, you have to go to the town hall. Oh, you didn't pay that bill. It is this constant around the clock regulation.
And if you think you own your house, if you stop paying somebody, you don't own your house anymore.
Do you really, Brian, I think it's crazy, and this is something you're going to find out about me, and I'm going to say some stuff that you probably never really thought of before.
Sure.
This might sound really extreme. When
Hit
someone's going around a door-to-door salesman or someone passing out pamphlets, they're running for office, or even, whatever, I don't think they have the right to come on your property. I'm not a crazy guy with a rifle saying I'm going to kill you if you come on. I'm not saying that at all.
Is it soliciting?
Brian, whether it is or not, you can't walk on someone's property. I have a huge problem because think about that. Every other law facilitates the fact that that's your property, and people can't just come walking on your property. But for some reason, there's these little exceptions. What's that all about?
Oh yeah, there's squatters' rights. There's there's stories out there of in the service, people going overseas, and then they come home and there's a goddamn family living in their fucking joint. And
I've heard of people not knowing there was someone living in their attic.
Nothing they can do about it. They can just squat in their house and they can't get kicked out once they're fucking
which is insane. So, but my point is, you've got that wacky exception, but then you've got another law that does say you have private property. I mean,
if some states, if you shoot an intruder, you will go to jail.
Right. Or here's another angle on the, again, we will talk about transgender and all that. We're going to talk about all this stuff. Don't have an issue with what people are doing with their lives. Everyone knows I've always stuck up for people. If someone was getting beat up simply because they're gay, I would be the first one to step in for them and help them. I've done it before. But I also think it's crazy.
We grew up around that.
Right.
We know.
But I also think it's insane if a parent says, I don't want my 3-year-old to get a sex change operation. I want to wait till they're older and they can make that decision coherently. And now they're in trouble with the law?
They can go to Colorado and get it done. 3-year-olds.
Right.
I don't know.
But Brian, there are stories out there right now. They're not even stories. They're true where people are in trouble with the law because they said, I don't want my 5-year-old doing that. Come on. What have we done? Have we lost our minds? Well, yeah, we have lost our minds.
The news is backwards.
Yeah. And we're going to get into all that stuff. Brian, the only other thing I want to say is, I thank you. You had this idea. I'm glad we're doing this now. And I hope, you kind of saw that there was something here that could happen and would be creative and be cool. And I hope I can do that for you. You seem to have a little more faith in my kind of like monologues and stuff than I do. You thought those would translate well into here. I hope they do. I don't know. We'll see.
Absolutely.
Thanks again. Anything else you want to say about all this? So telling people, I think you being here gives me credibility too. I really do. It's not the typical, what's he off to doing? You're here, you're helping a little. I think it is kind of tagged on to some of the other podcasts that happen in here. Definitely want to shout out It's a Hard Rock Life. I think that helps a little too, bringing in some of that audience. So you're giving me some credibility I might have not had before. Maybe a built-in audience. Any closing words, anything you want to say that I didn't say, or things
get ready for a fucking good time, guys. It's gonna be fucking, there's people you need to listen to out there, and fucking a lot of people don't hear what they need to be told.
And you kind of got the behind the curtain view. See, we're not saying stuff right now. Brian, how about this? Let's close by saying this. You know some of the things I have in mind. I think this is going to be great. I think it's stuff that we're going to expose people to ideas that they didn't even know were out there. You and me have talked about it. I ran it by you, and it's, I'd like it all to be a surprise. And
if we have an opposite point of view, we
that's
will
fine
gladly
too.
have that in another feed right here.
Brian, one of the things, and we've talked about this, what did I say to you? I would like to find people who I have publicly been critical of and let them come in here and they can tell me that I'm wrong. And I'm welcome to it.
Yeah.
Let's debate it. We've got a lot of ideas and that we've been talking about, and I hope you do too, that this is, the ideas seem very exciting. It's going to be really cool what we're going to do. I think it's going to be different. I think it's going to be groundbreaking. I don't think it's going to be like any other political thing you're going to be able to find. Regardless of how big or how small it is, I think it's going to be very unique.
I totally agree.
Yeah. So listen, we'll wrap it up here. We're gonna, few weeks, we're gonna have the second episode and we're gonna have our first guest, and tune in for that, because that thing's gonna change your life. And that's all for today. Thanks, Brian, and I will see you guys next time.